Hi everybody, so Resident Evil 4 Remake has just been released. So it's time to do a comparison with Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, I know Resident Evil 3 Remake isn't the most popular of the pair that we've had previous to this, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. I, however, really enjoyed Jill Valentine's entry into Resident Evil. Now, maybe this is because, although I did play the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis back in the day, I think I played it on the PlayStation 2. I can't really remember anything about it. I couldn't remember anything about it when I came to play it on my PC. When I bought it as part of the Raccoon City edition, where you got Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake together. And I also quite like the fact that it was quite short and quite simple, quite action-orientated. And also the fact that the graphics, I think, in the Resident Evil 3 Remake were better than in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, lots of people probably won't agree with those, but what that does mean is that when you come to Resident Evil 4, the better graphics aren't quite as better as if you'd come just from Resident Evil 2 Remake, because the jump, I think, in the graphics from Resident Evil 2 Remake to Resident Evil 4 Remake are quite significant. Now, Resident Evil 2 it's a great looking game. But the graphics sometimes could be a little bit rough around the edges, and I think by the time they released Resident Evil 3 Remake, they'd made them look better. However, Resident Evil 4 does look a bit better than Resident Evil 3 Remake, and what can't be denied is that with the engine getting the engine the way that they have got it running with the Resident Evil 4, what is very, very surprising is the open areas. So often in Resident Evil 4, you'll be going along and it'll be tight and it'll be cramped and it'll be claustrophobic, and then you come to an area where everything opens up in a way that it never did in Resident Evil 3 or Resident Evil 2 remakes. Often you might have some cut scenes when you saw a big area, but overall it was always tight corridors, wasn't it? And you're either inside buildings or in streets that have got lots of crashed cars and fires all around, and everything was very corridor-like. So graphical wise, Resident Evil 4 better than Resident Evil 3 Remake, but it's not a massive jump forward, but it looks great. They both are great looking games. The other bit that isn't as big a change if you're coming from Resident Evil 3 Remake to Resident Evil 4 is the action. Because again, if you'd only played Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 2 Remake, it's really, I think, we can say that game defines probably the survival horror genre. Then Resident Evil 3 Remake came along where it sort of lent into action horror a lot more, You had things like the side swerve, didn't you? So you could sidestep away from enemies. You could play it on easy mode so that you'd have the assault rifle. And you generally picked up more firepower throughout the game. Resident Evil 4 leans into this big time, and it is all about your ability to learn how to parry, how to use a melee combination after you've shot someone in the head. We now have a trader where you can get all sorts of advanced weaponry. At the moment, it's not in this video, but in my playthrough, I am using a sniper rifle. Of all things, so I can pick off enemies from quite a distance. So a lot of this is needed in Resident Evil 4 because these aren't zombies we're dealing with. These aren't the Raccoon City Umbrella infected people who've been infected with the T-virus. These people have got some sort of parasite inside them, so they've got a lot of intelligence left. So they wield weapons, they throw axes at you, they come at you with massive farm forks to try and kill you that way. They work together. One of them will hold you while another one assaults you. And so you need this extra firepower, but you really get a sense that Capcom, when they were coming up to Resident Evil 4, they would have had the meeting. What is going to make this different from what would have been, I guess, Resident Evil Code Veronica, which we haven't seen a remake of yet. And I guess it was bringing this action side to the Resident Evil series. And Resident Evil 4, the original, is known for this. This is what this game is all about. And Resident Evil 4 Remake leaned into this big style. It took me a little bit of getting used to, I do have to say. I started off by playing the game very much with the idea of, no, you need to preserve as many bullets as you can. You don't want to engage in combat. You don't want to be aggressive with enemies. You don't want to be moving towards enemies and closing that distance. You want to be coming back. Where in Resident Evil 4 Remake, actually, you're encouraged to close distance because you want to get in those headshots or leg shots to disable the enemy, to stagger them, so you can follow that up with a melee like kick to them, and then maybe you can go in with your knife to finish them off, and this sort of business. And it is a refreshing change, and once I'd really understood that and started to get half decent at it, you really start to enjoy it because you're faced with many more enemies than you would have in Resident Evil 3 Remake, but you have the tools to deal with them. You seem to have a lot more ammo available, and let's make no bounds about it, with Resident Evil 4, Capcom have moved the Resident Evil series into, it's more fantasy, isn't it now? I think, the fact that we do have a trader where you can buy things from, it does take some of the realism, if you can call it that we had with the Raccoon City Resident Evils, with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. However, saying all of this, I have to say that if you enjoy Resident Evil 3 Remake, you will absolutely enjoy Resident Evil 4, and definitely vice versa. Because there is undoubtedly a lot more depth to Resident Evil 4 than there was with Resident Evil 3. So if you played RE3 Remake, definitely pick up and buy Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you're playing Resident Evil 4, maybe you've finished it by the time you come to watch this video and you're thinking, which is the title I should play next? Well, to be honest, I think you should probably play Resident Evil 2 Remake first, but Resident Evil 3 Remake, get the Raccoon City edition, so you get both of them. You will enjoy playing as Jill Valentine, and especially you'll enjoy it once you pick up the assault rifle and some of the other weapons. Anyway, what do you think? That's enough from me. Put your questions in the comments down below, and I will of course see you again soon.